What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Scratch Agency podcast, hosted by Scratch Agents for Scratch Agents. This episode is brought to you by Virtual Intelligence, your premier partner for client-facing and back-office virtual employees. My name is Stephen Turnbull, founder of T5 Insurance Service in Clinton, New York, and I'm joined by my co-host today, the one and only, you already know, hold your applause, Mr. Sean Fitzgerald, founder of Sound Harbor Insurance. Man, Sean, it just rings off the tongue. Sound Harbor Insurance in Long Island, New York. How are you today, Sean?
Dude, I am doing great. I'm feeling like a mathematician the last couple of days. I've been diving into, I told you on the phone the other day, I've been diving into lifetime value of a customer and all that crazy stuff and trying to figure out how to come up with those figures. So been going down the rabbit hole the last couple of days, but it's been good stuff.
Well, what I love is you went back to one of our episodes to dive into that, right? So that's
Yeah, the episode with Jay. He really challenged me on that episode. Those questions, I was like, even calculate,
right.
Yeah, man, there's a lot that goes into it, but I think as a business owner, it's super important.
Good stuff. Well, I'm super excited to get in today's show. I've been stalking him on social media for a couple of years now and finally have the opportunity to meet him for the first time here. And we are very excited and honored to welcome to the show JC Wogomon, the founder and owner of Catalyst Insurance Group. JC, how are you today?
I'm doing great, guys. How about yourselves?
We're doing great. How did I do with the last name? Did I butcher it? We're pretty spot on.
Nailed it.
Perfect. Always want to make.
I've been called a lot worse.
That's right. So we got a lot we want to talk about today. Community impact, commercial, founding days, all that. Tell us just a little bit about your agency. And then I'd like to just start with kind of walking through how'd your agency start? What do those beginning days look like? You reference to the glory days that you're still in and all that good stuff. So let's start there.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was embarking on when I launched this agency. Tomorrow will actually be our 5-year anniversary. So
awesome.
Just over $2 million in premium, just shy of 300 in revenue. Myself, I've got a virtual employee, and then I've got another remote employee, and then myself. And so there's just 3 of us for right now, and we're cranking along. And man, it's been 5 years of learning lessons. And so it's been a journey, been a lot of fun, been a lot of headaches. I like to joke that I had a full head of hair, but I really didn't. I learn something new every day, and I'm grateful for that. Sometimes you got to force yourself to go through things you don't know how to do just so you can learn how to do them. And so as a scratch agent, you don't have a playbook, right? Now I've made it a very adamant part of my business plan to make sure I connect with agency owners around the country who have been there and done that. And what's amazing is most of them have been through the minefield and are willing to go back and grab you by the hand and say, don't step there, don't step here, and guide you back through that minefield, because at least the good ones want you to be exactly where they're at because they know what it's like. And so I'm so grateful that I've taken the time to create that network of what I would call mentors, people that owe me nothing but are willing to give me everything. Just that's been huge in the development of our agencies. So it's been an enjoyable experience.
What were the days before Catalyst? Were you in the industry? Were you not? What did that look like?
So if you want the whole story, I go back to when I was 10 years old. And when I was 10 years old, my father passed away. By the time I was 15, my mom and I were homeless, not living under a car or not living under a bridge, homeless or living in a car, but we were couch surfers in our community. And so for the last 3 years of high school, I just made the decision early on I wasn't going to be a victim, and I was going to take that opportunity to propel myself. So I worked my butt off, got a full ride scholarship to go to Ball State University, go Cardinals. And when I was 19, I was in a business class, and a guy came in and talked to our class by the name of Kyle Browning. Still to this day, one of my good friends, but he asked me, he goes, have you ever met an old, poor insurance guy? And I said, no, I haven't. And from where I came from, the situations I grew up in, that resonated with me, which I would later find for all the wrong reasons. But that resonated with me. And so I decided, hey, I'm going to go be an insurance agent. He worked for a company called Federated Insurance. I said, well, I'm going to go work for Federated Insurance. That sounds awesome. And I always loved people and loved relationships. And I just saw insurance as the best avenue to do that. And so fast forward, I went to work for Federated Insurance. They moved me to Minnesota for 9 months of training. And then they said, pack up your stuff. You're moving to Lafayette, Indiana. And so that's where I got my start. And I worked for Federated for close to 10 years and had an unbelievable run. And so, when I say the old poor insurance guy resonated with me for all the wrong reasons, what had happened is I'd fallen in love with stuff and status and money and all the ego intoxicating things that can come with this industry when you're not guided by a set of core principles. And so I ran too hard after or away from my situation and after the stuff. And in 2008, when the economy flipped and I lost over $1 million a year in premium, all of a sudden, I got humbled real quick because I realized I didn't like who I'd become in that process. And so that kind of plays all into my story later. That's why I'm sharing this all with you. But so in 2008, I lost $1 million a year in premium, which was over $100,000 a year in income. And all of a sudden I got humbled real quick. And, I'm a person of faith, so I'll share that, but get on your knees or God will put you there. And so I got humbled real quick, didn't like who I'd become. And so I wrote it out for another couple of years and then left Federated, went to Brown and Brown for a year, just not a good cultural fit for me. Did that for a year. And then I ended up leaving the industry altogether in 2011. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. This hurts. I don't enjoy it. And so I left the industry. When I say left the industry, I let my licenses lapse. I was as far out as out could be. And so did a lot of things in between, marketed a travel company for 5 years, had a lot of fun, didn't make a lot of money. And then my family and I relocated back here to the south side of Indianapolis where my wife grew up near her family. We had 2 kids and went to work at Sunbelt Rentals for a couple year period there. And it wasn't a bad gig, just not my gig. And so it was a very rough environment. And so I decided to leave there. A friend said, hey, we're opening an office furniture company. We need somebody with sales experience. I said, I don't know anything about office furniture, but if you're willing to teach me, I'm willing to learn. So I did that for about 9 months and found out I went to work for the most unethical person I've ever met in my life. He was telling me that I needed to lie to customers, that I needed to stretch the truth to get deals done. If I didn't know the answer, make it up. But the deal breaker was when he told me I was spending too much time with my family and I needed to be at the office more. I said, man, no, that's strike 3. I'm out. And didn't know what I was going to do, but I was at church one day, heard a sermon at church that really struck a chord with me. And I knew what I was going to do. I was going to get back into insurance, but this time I wasn't going to do it for my own selfish ambition. I was going to do it with the goal and the mission of making an impact in and around our community, taking a small portion of what we've been entrusted with and using that for impact in and around our community. So that's what I really am passionate about. Insurance is the vehicle that enables me to do that. And so that's what we started with, that idea almost 5 years ago. And here today, we're up over $60,000 we've been able to give back to our community. So that's what I'm most proud about. And so that's how we've gotten to where we're at here today.
Wow. That's an inspiring story. Thank you for sharing all that. Number one, thank you for saying my 3 favorite words, make an impact. I appreciate that and absolutely love that. But I want to ask you, with that incredible story that you just shared, is just super inspiring. What do you think it is in you that decides to bet on yourself every single time? I mean, you talked all the way from your childhood through starting Catalyst, and it was like, no, I'm going to do this for me. Hey, that doesn't seem right. I'm doing this. I'm, just making those pivots. What do you think that burn is inside of you to do that?
That's one of the things. I've come to grips with a lot of things of my past and my upbringing, and there's 3 more podcasts that I could dive into just on that alone. But it's one of the things that, why was I able to not play the victim card and instead become a victor, use the pain of the story to inspire the story, I guess you could say. I don't know the answer to that. God gave me grit and I've become uncomfortable. I've become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And, knowing where I want to go and knowing that life is possible for me, and just putting my head down and getting to work. And when you fall down and you make a mistake, get back up again. And every time you fall down and hit the floor is just a little bit higher than what it was the last time. And so by default, as long as you get back up one more time, you're going to elevate yourself higher than you were before, and just got to keep going one step at a time.
Yeah, and JC, I think it's funny. I was reading about this recently. I feel like when you grow up homeless at some point, or like I go to the church to get free food at one point. Like when you grow up in that like scrappy environment, I feel like it really helps when you become an entrepreneur because you have to get scrappy, you have to be creative, and those things, although in the moment they're not the best things to go through, but I do feel like us and other people, I'm sure, are blessed in a sense to have gone through that, because that can help us become scrappy and creative, which you need to be in the entrepreneurial space, And it's people that are handed stuff, it's, no knock against them, but they're not as scrappy, and maybe they don't have that fire inside like we do, and it's a little more difficult for them,
As somebody with kids, I've got a 14-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, almost 11, and one of the things I worry about is, how do I teach them to have that grit to achieve great things when they never had to worry about where their clothes or food were coming from? And, I just never wanted to be a victim, man. When you're a victim, you give up all control. Mm. And in our society today, there is a large amount of people pushing people to play the victim, to be the victim. Because when you do that, then you become slaves to them, to those people. And I just never wanted to be that. I never wanted to be owned by somebody. And that's why I just decided not to be a victim. I was going to use that as motivation to drive me to better my circumstances. Right. It's very soul sucking and painful when you realize I'm in this situation because of somebody else. Man, you have no control. You can't better your situation when you have that mindset. Right? This is the greatest country in the world. And it's because we have the ability to climb out of our circumstances. Very few places in the world can you elevate yourself beyond the social class you were born into. And that's what fuels me.
I love that, man. Thank you for sharing all that. That is super inspiring. Let's dive into the early days of the agency. Take us through the first 100 days. What does that look like? What did day one look like? And how'd you bootstrap this thing to get to where you are today?
So it was about in February of 2019 that I decided I was going to open an insurance agency. So I had about a 6-month runway to figure it out. And the first thing I did is I just started listening to every podcast I could get my hands on. I had a 45-minute commute to the job that I didn't like, and each way. So that allowed me, I can get 2 podcasts in a day. And I'll never forget, is Joey Gingola and Sid Rowe had, I don't even remember the name of the podcast anymore, but that was the first one. And then that led me to the Insurance Guys podcast. And then that led me to Chris Paradiso, who I reached out to. And he, Christian, I'm having a brain. He's in Kentucky right now. I can't think of his last name off the top of my head. He was a huge help out of the gates. Talked to Bradley Flower. I had no reservations about picking up the phone or reaching out through social media to find these podcast guests that were on there and just pick their brains. And so I became a sponge. So I'll never forget when I walked into my office that first day. It was about a 10 by 15 office that had 4 desks in it. It was a shared space because that's what I could afford at the time. And I walked in. I can hear the sound of the key going into the door and the lock turning. And my desk was in the corner. It's a dark room. I turn on the light. I sit down. I pull out my laptop. Day one, open it up, ready to go. I have no customers. I have no revenue. I have no systems, and I have no idea what I'm doing. And sometimes I still feel that way. Here we are, 1,300 policies later, 500 customers later, and I still don't know what I'm doing. I feel like sometimes, but I'm grateful for that experience because the mindset that I took early on from the get-go was, I am not going to pretend that I know exactly what I'm doing here. I understand insurance. I know how to sell insurance. I do not know how to run an insurance business. And those are two very, very dramatically different things. And so I adopted the philosophy that I was going to be an intern in my own business. And I was like, look, I'm going to let the business teach me how I want to do business. I knew that I had to focus on the customer. I knew I had to focus on the client experience. I knew that insurance was a painful topic process for almost everybody. And I had to look for opportunities and ways that I could make it less painful. I like to joke and say insurance sucks and it's my job to make it suck less. I actually have t-shirts made that said making insurance suck less since 2019.
I love that.
But it's the truth. And so with that as my focus, trying to find ways to make this process easier and not just doing it a certain way because that's the way it's always been done. I came into this with no perspective because I'd been out of the business for 8 years, right? I hadn't talked insurance in 8 years, but I came in with the perspective that I didn't have. I didn't come out of an agency right away and open my own, right? I didn't know how they were doing it and just want to tweak it.
Sure.
Right. I'm like, well, we'll try this. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, I'll learn something. So we did, and it didn't work. And so we learned something and tried it, tweaked a little bit and tried it a different way. And, being an intern in your own business and not having the attitude that I know all the answers and rather coming at it with a student's mindset as opposed to a know-it-all, I checked my ego at the door and just learned. And I still learn every day. I'm still tweaking things constantly, always keeping the client experience at the center of what we do and trying to make that better. And so, those first 100 days, my goal early on, I did not have production goals. Now you got to understand, there's a lot of people who open an agency, and you guys know this, man, they got to put food on the table for their kids. And I was not in that position. Thank God. My wife had a very stable job, making decent money, enough to support our family. And so I didn't have to go out guns a-blazing and just sell. I did sell, obviously, and that was my goal. But really, more importantly, was to just learn the business. And so it enabled me the time to be a student, right? And put this thing together.
So during that first 100 days, you're learning the business, you start to grow, you start to scale. At what point did you get help? What was the focus? What was the morph of the business up till today?
It's just always a constant learning, constant tweaking, right? What's important is not necessarily what you say yes to, but what you say no to. Because when you're new and you're trying to figure this all out and stuff's thrown at you left and right, whether it be technology or, different ways of doing business, different systems, you're like, oh yeah, let's go do that. And you run after that. And then it's, oh, let's go do that. And you run after that. And at the end of the day, you're just running in circles. So being able to have the discipline to not chase stuff, being strategic in your decisions, which is definitely not easy to do sometimes. And so that's what I would say.
Yeah, I hear you on that. What's the makeup of the book now, JC? You like 50-50 personal commercial?
We were as high as 60-40 personal to commercial, which is exactly where I want to be.
Yeah.
Right now we're a little heavier personal lines than we are commercial, only because me being the only person with commercial experience and me being tied up with day-to-day agency stuff kind of slowed my ability to get out and prospect and sell commercial. And so that's we're right dead smack in the middle of trying to hire somebody to come in office here, parting ways with our virtual employee. She's fantastic, but she doesn't answer the phone. She's not licensed. She's limited in what she can do. I need a whole person, and I consider that kind of a half person, and which is great because that was my first hire, was a VA, and it's a stepping stone, right? It's a stepping stone to get you to that next level. And that's where I think she's done great. She's played a great role for us. She's been very helpful. But it's time for us to evolve and take that next step. And I suck at hiring. That's probably my biggest weakness. It's uncomfortable for me. Prior to opening this business, I'd never had anybody as an assistant that I was responsible for that reported to me ever, anything. It was always me, go, go, go. It was all me. And now, obviously, I can't get to where I want to go by myself. And so hiring it's definitely not my favorite thing to do in the world. I've gotten it wrong before, and which cost me time, cost me a couple of relationships, cost me money. So
let's if we can, let's dive into that a little bit more, because there's a lot of obviously scratch agents that are listening to this that may be themselves in a VA, whatever it might be, and are looking to hire. What are some lessons that you have learned that you just said that cost you, or whatever it might be, through that process that these people could learn from?
Number one, don't bring chaos into your business. Okay. If you're looking at somebody and they have a chaotic personal life, that chaos is going to spill over into your business, especially in a small business. The smaller you are, the less you can hide. And people that have a chaotic personal life are going to have a chaotic business life. That's probably the underlying theme. But the other one is, man, if there's red flags, pay attention to them. There were red flags in this particular situation. And the guy's a great guy. I'm still friends with him today. He just didn't work out in my business, right? And if there's red flags there, pay attention to them. You're going to want to ignore them because you're desperate to hire somebody, and all of the positives you think are going to outweigh the negatives. But those negatives have a multiplication effect, right? It's not simple math, more positives than negatives, right? Those negatives have a multiplication effect and can really throw a monkey wrench in things.
Yeah. So, I'm with you on that. JC, one of the things, I know you do it now too, Stephen, is asking the interviewee to send you a video answering these 3 to 5 questions. And I don't know, Stephen, I know you could speak on it too, but I know you did that with your last employee. I found that to be super helpful, because what you'll get is people won't even send a video, and you don't have to even think about it. Oh, there's 25%. Okay, how do I send it? What software? Am I using a link? And they make it way too complicated. And then there'll be a couple of people that send it, email to you in a Zoom video or whatever. And they answer all the questions and go, this is the person I want to work with. They know how to do a video, so they know how to use technology a little bit. Answer a few questions about the agency, why they want to work there, and why they like the core values, Well,
I think the most important thing in that, and you two can well over speak on this than I can, but we talk about setting standards in our agency. JC talked about learning when to say no is more important than when to say yes, and all of that stuff. So I think if you do that with the hiring process and say, like you said, Sean, here's the boxes they must check before we have that initial conversation. What are you doing? Just like the clients that you're pre-qualifying those people. And it is a push and pull, like JC said, when you're ready to hire that first person. And I mean, I even went through this from the virtual assistants that I've hired of, well, they're on the camera. They seem like a great person. Let's get to work. Let's do it, And then versus learning more of, like, and then the last one, who is my third virtual assistant that I have now, that hiring process was so much more different and is the best one that we have had because of the conversations we had up front, the expectations, the pre-qualifying, and all those things. So I think to your point, Sean, too, like, set that process just like you would with clients, just like what you do in the agencies as far as pre-qualifying, and that could help. But
that's one of the things we did early on. Was we set agency standards for coverage. We set I have like an ideal client profile. It's like 4 pages long. Everything from demographics to economics to what are these people's types of problems that they are dealing with on a day. They could have nothing to do with insurance, but these are these are what these people are dealing with. These are their positive characteristics. These are their negative characteristics. And what's amazing is our process ended up lining up perfectly with that ideal client profile, to where you drop them in the top and they fall out the bottom as customers. There's no friction.
Yeah.
right? You do a quote
Yeah.
video, they're going to watch it. They click the Canopy Connect link to send you their deck pages. They do e-signature. They set up for EFT. Like, it's just easy. I was just talking to a lady. I'm kind of going in a different direction here. I was just talking to a lady here this week that has a large agency, and she posted on Facebook that they're shutting down for new business because they can't handle all the service. And I'm like, her book's probably about 3 times the size of mine. And she says they get 500 phone calls a week. I don't get 500 phone calls a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why?
Yeah.
Because we've set our agency up that way to have our ideal client profile, policy minimums, and those people aren't filled with drama. It just,
And you've trained your clients how to communicate with you.
exactly right. We do
Don't
get
call you 5
text, we
times
do
a
get
day.
email, right? People use our app to reach us,
Yep.
but they don't call us very, very seldomly.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, you had mentioned having the ideal client, right, and standard.
Yeah.
But back to hiring, I've had a lot of people like I'm interested. I love this job. This sounds great. Cool. Go to our website, put your name, phone number, and email address in. Okay, I lost half of them right there.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And upload your resume. Second one is, hey, thanks for your interest in this position. Here's 10 questions I need you to complete. Right? I lost another half of them there.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to beg you to do what I ask you to do. I just had this conversation this morning with my employee, Carrie. I was like, look, I'm not going to beg you and follow up with you. I don't need to babysit. And if I got to do that in the interview process, I'm going to have to do that with you from now until eternity. And I'm not going to do that. I had somebody like that before, and, hey, did you get the e-signatures on file? Hey, did you get the application signed? Hey, did you follow up with this lead? And it was just constant. And it's just, talk about the opposite of productivity and efficiency. And if you can't do that in the interview process, man, you're out.
I want to go back to the ideal client profile in 1 second, but I want to derail just with a comment because I think this could help some people. Mike Cruz, who is a good friend of the show, obviously, and has been on a couple times, he had told me, Steven, you got to set up a sales and service email, meaning service at T5, sales at T5, and start training people. When you need these requests, you come through the service email. You need these sales requests, come through here. So now we operate out of our personal emails for the team, the service at, and the sales at email. In just a month's time, and mind you, we're a team of 3 right now. Just a month's time, I've already seen the difference of being able to have carrier reports or carrier notifications come through the service email. And now my VA is automatically taking care of that, right? Because he has access to that and it's going right through it. And my pushback to him was, well, I don't know if we're a big enough agency to start doing that. But to your point, JC, and kind of what we were talking about of like setting these things up and training the clients of how to do that. Now I get a client that is emailing me. I copy it. I put it in the service email. I email from them. Next thing you know, they're starting to email through the service email. And like we're training those clients how to do that. So going back to that ideal client profile, when you created that, what was the use intended for that? Was it just internally? Was it just to kind of keep you on track of what you're looking for in the ideal client, or what was the use?
I went to a conference and Grant Botman said we needed an ideal client profile, and he was a lot more successful than me. And so I'm smart enough to recognize I can either copy genius or reinvent average. All right. And so I'm like, hey, he's successful. He did it. And here's how he did it. And, another one of my favorite people on the planet is Billy Wagner. And, he goes, what would it look like if it was easy? Well, if it was easy, I'd have clients that don't shop their insurance every year. They never go out for non-pay. They very seldomly have claims. They're not constantly refinancing their house. They have 3, 4, 5 policies. They have something worth protecting. They have kids that are active in sports, or they're very busy people, meaning they need efficiency. Their time is more valuable than their money. I can go right on down the list. And so that became my ideal client profile, because those types of, if I had an entire book of business of those types of people, my life would be easy. And that's what I've focused on. And that's led to high retention, even through this hard market. We don't get a lot of Why did my insurance rates go up 30%? Well, everything else went up 30%. Why would this be any different?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're in the business of putting stuff back together, and what everything we use to put stuff back together with, what has it done?
It is
Right?
such a great point, and I don't think we've talked about this till we're blue in the face on the show, and I do not think that we can talk about it enough, of the pre-qualification and the fact of not writing everything, when you start, just to get revenue in the door, for what those problems will create in the third, fourth,
Well, I've
fifth
made
year.
that mistake too.
Right. And
Where can I fax you the signed application? Oh, whoa, no.
yeah. Well, Sean, I want you to talk about in this conversation of how you handle those conversations of getting a request that's not during your process, because you helped me with that recently, putting myself in the hot seat. I put in our mastermind group. I just had a phone call with this guy and it felt bad, and I took the information a different way, and I should have done it. I should not have done that. What's the other way you guys handle that? And Sean, you helped me walk through that. So dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so that case specifically, it was, well, if I remember correctly, your process was, and I have the same process, obtaining a copy of the policy before we give them the final proposal.
Correct. Yeah.
So in your case, you asked the person for the proposal. What did they give you, or whatever feedback they give you? They don't trust you. They think you're a used car salesman, whatever the case is. So usually how I handle that is I just say, listen, I totally get it, but in order for me to do my job the right way and properly advise you on what the best solution is for you, I need to see a copy of your current policy, because the current policy is going to have all the limits on it, the exposures, the exclusions, and if I can't see what's on your current policy, I'm not going to be able to properly advise you on what the best solution is. If we click back further on that, one last Hail Mary I would maybe give is just, I might say something like, hey, you might have the cheapest policy with the best coverage, but there's no way for me to know that unless I see what you currently have. Yeah. We all know the clients tell us, oh yeah, I got $1 million in coverage, and then you look at the policy and it's 400,000 or whatever the case is. So
sure,
that's how I spin it to them.
100%. Here's the thing. If somebody doesn't trust you enough to give you a copy of their existing coverages for you to compare what you're going to present, they don't trust you enough to do business with you. And if they do, it's on one reason and one reason alone, and that's because you have the cheapest price. Yeah. Right? And if that's the only reason people are going to do business with you, there will always be somebody cheaper. That is not a good customer. That is not a good fit. And, we make our money in this business $100 at a time. And the only way we can make a long-term viable business is to renew customers 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. If they're falling out the bottom as fast as you're putting them in the top, you have a sales job. You're not building an insurance agency, right? That's why I laugh at a lot of the mortgage companies out there that sell monoline policies, have no renewal strategy, no account rounding strategy, and then they complain that the insurance business doesn't work right. I could go off on a tangent on that. Obviously, I get fired up about that. But yeah, it's you got to have 3 things: price, product, and relationship. And any one of those that's super heavy is going to trump the other 2. But normally, you need 2 out of 3.
Yeah. And I'll tell people straight up too, if I get that vibe, JC, that someone just wants, all they care about is the cheapest, I will say that exact line. I'll tell them, hey, listen, and I'll say it straight up, if you're looking for the cheapest price, you'll find cheaper if you call around enough places.
Yep.
You'll find somebody that'll cut coverage where they shouldn't cut, or they maybe have a product that we don't have. I said, call around. You'll find something cheaper.
Yeah.
Because you already pre-qualified them. So at that point,
I had a gal that was in one of my networking groups. I'm good friends with her. They do a lot of my promotional products. We're in masterminds together, everything. And I said, hey, I'd like to give you a second opinion on your insurance program. By the way, we don't quote. I give you a second opinion. I'll give you an analysis. I will do a review. I don't quote. It's not on our website. It's not in our vocabulary whatsoever. But I was like, hey, I'd like to have the opportunity to give you a second opinion on your insurance program. So I go down and I ask for a copy of the policy, right? And I get a blacked out version, right? That's strike 1. Strike 2, hey, how'd you end up with them? Oh, we've been doing business with them for 20 years, and now their daughter's in the business, and they do our health insurance. I'm like, oh, well, if you could change one thing about the relationship you have with them, what would it be? Well, really, nothing. So then why am I here?
Yep.
right? They're good friends of mine. I would love to have their business, but I
Because
don't
they're just
need
going to take
practice.
your quote and
I
give
don't
it
need
right to
practice
their.
putting in quotes, man. I
Right.
don't. Like,
Yeah.
there's no opportunity there for me to improve their situation other than a cheap price, which they're probably going to give back to the incumbent to match anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. Hey, as we look to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes, I want to hit on community impact. I love all the stuff that you do in community. I think you said you've donated $60,000 or something into the community already in 5 short years of business, which is incredible. Talk to us about why this is important, why it's part of your business model, and what it means to you.
I shared my story with you early on in my upbringing, and there were a lot of organizations and people there that helped us along the way. And who would I be to not help others, right?
Mm,
And so it's one thing to be successful for yourself and your family, but it's another when you have a calling that makes you feel greater than that, right? Where it's not about the P&L, solely about the P&L at the end of the year, right? It's did I make a difference? Did my life matter? If I go out and make a bunch of money, does my life matter? Right? I can still go out and make just a slightly little bit less amount of money and help other people and help other organizations and people that were less fortunate. That's what my motivation is, because it keeps first things first, right? I think we've lost that a little bit in humanity, the ability and willingness to help other people. Even if I don't agree with their situation, right? You know, it's one of the things I battle daily is I got out of this situation. Why can't you?
mm,
And who am I to judge, right? You know, my Savior died for them too. And so I could go on about that, but it gives me a greater purpose than myself, right? You know, seeing the impact that we're making in and around the community. You know, we primarily focus on elevating the human condition, meaning feeding, clothing, or educating, and supporting our military veterans and first responders, which is another group I'm extremely passionate about. Anybody that's willing to sign up, you know, we don't have a draft anymore in this country. So anybody that's willing to sign up and go put themselves in harm's way and get sent halfway around the world and have bullets and bombs and everything else thrown at them, willingly sign up for that, man, who are we to let them come back and live on the streets, right? And suffer the wounds that they suffered over there, not the visible ones, but the invisible ones, right? Who are we to just turn a blind eye to that?
amen
Right?
to that.
I didn't sign up for the military, but my God, I am so grateful for the people in this country, the men and women who did.
Mm-hmm.
And same with our police, same with our firefighters, right? You know, they signed up to run in when I'm trying to run out.
Yep, for sure. Can you just touch on how you do that? Do you do it through partnering with other businesses just to give some people brainstorm ideas for if they want to start doing some community impact stuff? Are you just writing checks? Or are you doing it through referral programs? What does that look like?
A lot of it had to do with things that I was, you know, organizations that I was loosely affiliated with or knew about prior. You know, we've worked with organizations that help rescue women from human trafficking. Basically, women that were that were trafficked can come there. They have a 2-year in-house rehab program where they rehabilitate them, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally, to try to put them back on the right path, right? That's something that, my God, I'm so grateful that I've never been through that. And I hope my kids have never been through that. But the purpose is not just to support that organization. It's not just to write a check and do virtue signaling and say, look how great I am. Here's the check I'm giving them. It's more of, hey, there's this organization out there. You may or may not be aware of them.
Sure.
But they're rescuing people from human trafficking. And, you know, the point and intent of my message is for these organizations to use me and my platform and my audience to get their word out about what they're doing, because I don't know anybody personally that's been human trafficked, but that doesn't mean you might not. And that means, you know, you might know somebody who knows somebody who does. And so, you know, just the ability to get the word out about other organizations and they might be able to reach people that need them. And so now that's the other focus. It's not just stroking checks and saying, hey, here, go spend it how you want. It's, hey, tell me about your organization. Tell me who are you impacting? How are you impacting? How can other people that see this make an impact? And, when I originally started this agency, my goal was to give away $1 million in 10 years. Now, I'm not going to get there on my own. I realized that. But one of the unintended effects of how I've gone about my community giving and sharing the word about our giving is I've inspired, a lot of people have told me that I've inspired them to do the same. And I'll never be able to, add that all up, but you throw a pebble out in the middle of a smooth pond and watch that ripple effect. That was something I didn't really anticipate. And it was kind of an unintended benefit of all of this is the amount of people who I've inspired to follow suit. Look, guys, we don't need it all, right? We're very blessed to be in an industry where we can do pretty well for ourselves, and we don't need it all. And, people buy something that they have to buy. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, man, I can't wait to write my check to my insurance agent today. I'm hopefully never going to need this, but I can't wait to give them $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $6,000. Nobody does that. They have to, right? So why not take something that they have to do, don't like doing, and repurpose just a small portion of it so that, hey, I know you don't like doing this, but at least part of it's going back to your community to try to make it a better place to live.
So incredible. JC, thank you for the time, the inspiring story. That was a fantastic episode. I'm really thankful for you spending the time and getting to finally meet you. Like I said, I've been watching on Facebook and the journey. It's very exciting to watch, and appreciate spending the time with Sean and I. What's the best way people can get in touch with you? Maybe you said something that somebody wants to pick your brain about. What would be the best way to do that?
I'm on all the major social media platforms. And, my cell phone number, feel free to reach out, call me, text me, 765-212-7590. Had the same cell phone number for 26 years. So,
and JC, I just wanted to say one thing real quick. I think I know you're only 5 years in, but I think you're already extremely successful to be where you were to where you are now. Like I said earlier, it's a blessing, man. You're scrappy, you're creative, you're coachable, you're curious. And it's just going to continue to propel you and to be able to give back more. So I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate that.
It's so inspiring. Everybody, listen back, hit the rewind button, play that puppy again. That was a fantastic one. Reach out to JC if you have any questions. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Scratch Agency Podcast. Do us a favor, like the show, share the show, and subscribe. Remember to check us out on our Telegram. We got about 48 people in there now. It is buzzing, great conversations with other agency owners. And we've started a new segment called Community Chats, 10, 15-minute episode where we talk about a discussion or a topic that was in the community. So make sure to go to scratchagencypodcast.com, click join the community to join that free community and get some insight. But most importantly, remember to dig down deep, believe in yourself, in your own future. We'll see you next week. Take care.